A blind man, a retired service dog, and a poor choice by a biker culminated in a moment that left everyone stunned. The sun beamed brightly over Lincoln Park in San Antonio, Texas, casting warm rays over the neatly trimmed lawns and winding pathways. The air was filled with the scent of freshly cut grass, mingled with hot dogs and popcorn from a nearby vendor. It was a day that invited people outside, where strangers exchanged smiles, and life's usual burdens felt lighter. Children dashed across the playground, their laughter echoing above the soft sound of the park's central fountain. Parents walked hand in hand, occasionally adjusting a hat or snapping a quick photo. Joggers moved steadily along the paths, earbuds in place, with sweat darkening their shirts. In the distance, dogs barked, chasing frisbees or playfully tugging at their leashes. Near the fountain, a man sat quietly on a wooden bench, relaxed and facing the sun. His name was Terrence, a tall, lean man in his early 50s, his dark skin radiating in the sunlight. He wore sunglasses to shield his unseeing eyes, and a white cane rested beside him, its handle smooth from years of use. Beside him sat King, a German shepherd with a sleek coat and an aura of quiet confidence. King wasn't just a pet, he was Terrence's guide and protector, an essential part of his independence. For regular park visitors, Terrence and King were a familiar sight, often seen navigating the paths together, with King leading the way. Some admired them from a distance, while others occasionally stopped to chat, drawn in by Terrence's warm presence and King's remarkable discipline. Today, however, most people seem content to leave them undisturbed, absorbed in their own leisure, but tranquility is easily disrupted. The distant roar of motorcycle engines shattered the park's peaceful ambience, growing louder by the second. Heads turned toward the parking lot as a group of 6 bikers arrived, their shiny bikes glimmering in the sunlight. They dismounted with practiced swagger, their heavy boots striking the pavement audibly. Dressed in leather vests adorned with patches and slogans, the bikers commanded attention wherever they went. Their loud laughter and magnetic presence were both captivating and unsettling. As they made their way toward the park's center, conversations quieted, and people instinctively stepped aside. Even the dogs appeared to sense the shift, some barking nervously while others huddled closer to their owners. The leader of the group, a tall man with a grizzled beard and piercing eyes, surveyed the park as if it were his personal territory. His gaze landed on Terrence and King, a smirk forming on his face, a subtle yet clear indication that trouble was brewing. Terrence, unaware of the approaching group, remained seated, his hand resting gently on King's head. King, however, was alert, his ears perked, and his sharp eyes followed the bikers as they drew closer. Although King's body was still, his presence was charged, like a tightly wound spring ready to spring into action. The bikers halted near the benches, their raucous banter cutting through the park's previously gentle atmosphere. A few onlookers glanced nervously in their direction before quickly diverting their gaze, pretending to focus on other conversations or their phones. Yet it was impossible to ignore the tension that had settled over the area. The leader of the bikers, now just a few feet from Terrence, turned to his friends and chuckled. "Check this out," nodding toward the man and his dog, his tone dripping with mockery, a challenge to anyone who might dare to respond. Terrence didn't react. His face remained turned toward the sun, his expression tranquil. But King's ears pinned back slightly, his gaze sharpening. He sensed the shift, the impending conflict that Terrence could not perceive. As the bikers' laughter echoed through the park, it became clear to anyone paying attention that this was no ordinary afternoon. Trouble was on its way, and it was aimed directly at Terrence and King. Terrence had always embodied quiet strength, a trait developed through years of challenges that could have broken most people. Losing his sight in his mid-30s due to a devastating car accident was a turning point, but it did not define him. Instead, he chose to adapt, persevere, and live purposefully. Navigating a sighted world was difficult. Terrence faced obstacles ranging from trivial inconveniences to outright discrimination. Yet, he always carried himself with dignity. He turned heads, not because of his blindness, but because of the calm confidence he radiated. His guide dog, King, was his anchor in this new chapter. King wasn't just a service animal, he was a partner. They had been paired 3 years ago, and their bond was immediate. King's training was exceptional, but it was his intuition that set him apart. He seemed to understand Terrence's needs before they were expressed, a skill developed during his years working in law enforcement. King's previous life was filled with action and danger. As a police canine, he had been involved in high-stakes missions, tracking suspects, detecting drugs, and ensuring the safety of his handlers. These experiences shaped him into a dog with a sharp mind and unwavering sense of duty. Transitioning to guide work was seamless for King. Protecting Terrence was not just a job, it was a calling. On ordinary days, their presence at the park was unremarkable. Familiar visitors recognized Terrence and King, often greeting them with a wave or a friendly hello. Children sometimes asked to pet King, their faces lighting up when Terrence explained that King was a working dog and couldn't be distracted. Parents appreciated this lesson in respect and boundaries. However, today felt different. The bikers' arrival shifted the atmosphere, their loud voices and intimidating presence creating unease. Most parkourers kept their distance, hoping to avoid drawing attention. But Terrence, seated on his bench with King beside him, remained oblivious to the growing tension. His world was shaped by sound, touch, and intuition, and while he couldn't see the bikers, he could sense the subtle change in the park's rhythm. King was fully aware of the situation. His keen eyes tracked the group as they approached, his body language subtle yet deliberate. He didn't bark or growl. King was too disciplined for that. But his posture shifted slightly, a silent signal that he was prepared to act if necessary. The dog's calm demeanor belied the razor-sharp instincts honed through years of training. The bikers, unaware of King's background, saw only a man and his dog. To them, Terrence appeared vulnerable, an easy target for mockery or worse. Their leader, a man who thrived on dominance, was eyeing the pair with a smirk that hinted at trouble. "You think he can even tell we're here?" One of the bikers joked, nudging his friend. They chuckled, their voices just loud enough to be heard. The leader then turned his attention fully to Terrence, his voice laced with sarcasm. "Nice day to sit and soak up the sun, huh, buddy? You and your little helper there having a good time?" Terrence didn't respond immediately. He had become accustomed to such comments over the years, some stemming from curiosity, others from malice. He reached down and gently patted King's head, his fingers brushing against the dog's soft fur. "We're doing just fine," he finally replied, his tone calm yet firm. The leader laughed, clearly unimpressed. "Fine, huh? You sure about that?" He stepped closer, the heavy sound of his boots drawing King's complete attention. The dog's ears perked, and his gaze locked onto the man unyieldingly. Terrence tilted his head slightly, as if listening intently to the man's movements. He couldn't see the threat, but he felt it approaching. King's subtle shift in posture informed him of everything he needed to know. Yet neither the bikers nor the onlookers realized that King wasn't just any dog. He was about to show that even in retirement, his training and loyalty were sharper than ever. Tommy, the biker leader, took another step forward, his shadow now looming over Terrence and King, the sound of his boots scraping against the gravel, a deliberate noise meant to attract attention. The other bikers hung back, laughing among themselves, their humor an unsettling backdrop to the unfolding scene. Tony wasn't one to shy away from an audience. He thrived on it. King's eyes monitored every movement, his body remaining still but charged with quiet intensity. He didn't bark or growl. His training far exceeded that. Instead, he watched, calculating distances, angles, and potential threats. To anyone familiar with dogs, it was evident that King wasn't afraid. He was simply waiting. Tony smirked, glancing at his friends before turning back to Terrence. "You know, I've encountered a lot of tough dogs in my time," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "But this one here doesn't look so tough to me." Terrence, still seated, tilted his head slightly toward Tony. His expression was calm and almost serene, as if he hadn't perceived the hostility in the man's tone. But inside, he was attentively listening, piecing together the situation. He didn't need to see Tony to understand the kind of man he was, the type who picked fights to feel powerful, confusing kindness for weakness. King shifted subtly, positioning himself between Tony and Terrence. The movement was discreet but spoke volumes. In this moment, he wasn't just a guide dog. He was a protector, ready to defend his partner if needed. Tony noticed the shift and laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Oh, what's this? You think a dog can scare me? He's just a mutt. What's he going to do? Bark me to death?" One of the bikers shouted from behind, half laughing and half anxious. "Hey Tony, maybe it's best to let it go." But Tony wasn't hearing it. His pride was at stake, and he refused to back down in front of his gang or the gathering crowd of onlookers. He stood tall, cracking his knuckles for effect. "Let's see if this mutt can back up that stare." Before anyone could react, Tony kicked out sharply at King's side. The sound of leather striking fur resonated across the now quiet park. King took a step back, absorbing the hit. For a brief moment, everything was still, an electric silence as everyone anticipated the next move. Then, like flipping a switch, King's demeanor shifted, his body lowered, muscles tensed, and his gaze fixed on Tommy with a focus that sent a shiver through the spectators. A low growl rumbled from deep within him, not chaotic but controlled. It wasn't a warning, it was a vow. Terrence's voice sliced through the tension, sharp and authoritative. "King, hold." The German Shepherd froze mid-action, his growl fading. His body remained coiled and ready, but he obeyed. His training was impeccable, his loyalty unquestionable. Tommy, who had been grinning moments ago, now appeared unsettled, stepping back as his confidence wavered. What kind of dog is this?" Terrence rose slowly, using his cane for support. His face remained calm, but his tone held a newfound sharpness. "This isn't just any dog," he stated emphatically. "You've made the biggest mistake of your life." The crowd fell silent, captivated by the unfolding drama. They sensed something extraordinary was about to happen. The air was thick with tension, felt in every breath. King stood firm, his eyes locked on Tony, unwavering and fierce. The previously noisy park was now silent, save for the gentle rustle of leaves. Everyone was watching the German Shepherd, waiting for his next move. With a steady hand resting on King's head, Terrence spoke with authority. "King, stay." The dog remained still, his body taut like a wound spring, poised yet restrained. To the untrained observer, he might seem calm, but those who understood dogs could see the immense control he exerted. His growl had faded, replaced by a deep stillness that felt even more unsettling. Tony stood a few feet away, his earlier bravado visibly shaken. He wiped his hands on his jeans, trying to mask his anxiety with an air of nonchalance. "It's just a dog," he muttered, though his voice trembled slightly. Terrence tilted his head, processing Tony's words. A faint, humorless smile appeared. "You really don't get it, do you?" he said softly. "This isn't just any dog. This is a trained canine. He spent years doing what you couldn't even imagine, serving, protecting, saving lives. And he's holding back right now because I instructed him to." Tony's face paled as he began to grasp the weight of Terrence's words. "A canine, like a police dog?" Terrence confirmed. "Exactly. 3 years on the force. He has disarmed suspects, pursued criminals, and shielded his partner from danger countless times. Then kicking him makes you tough. It just shows how lucky you are." The crowd murmured, their shock rippling outward. Many had suspected King was no ordinary guide dog, but hearing Terrence's explanation added gravity to the situation. People exchanged looks, some shaking their heads in disbelief, while others shot Tony glares filled with disdain. King remained poised and silent, his focus unwavering on Tony. His training instructed him to wait for the next command, but his instincts told him to be ready for anything. His tail was low, ears slightly back, not out of fear, but out of intense concentration. Tony attempted to regain some of his earlier confidence, but it felt hollow. "I didn't know, all right. I didn't realize he was special." Terrence's expression turned stern. "It shouldn't matter what kind of dog he is. You don't kick any animal, and you certainly don't mock someone who depends on that animal for their independence." The murmurs grew louder, echoing agreement and judgment. One man called out, "You're lucky that dog is better trained than you are, buddy." Tony's friends, who had been laughing and encouraging him moments ago, now appeared uncomfortable. One nudged Tony's arm. "Maybe we should just leave, man. This isn't worth it." But before they could retreat, Terrence spoke again, his voice cutting through the noise. "You think walking away resolves this?" He stepped forward, his cane tapping the ground with quiet precision. "You just showed everyone here exactly who you are, and you taught my dog something too, that there are people who don't deserve the respect they demand." Tony glanced around, eyes darting from the crowd to King, who remained unmoving. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, heavy and palpable. As he stood there, struggling for a response, it became painfully evident to everyone that the power in this encounter lay not with Tony, but with the man and his dog, those he had underestimated. Tony's bravado faded, leaving him awkwardly standing in front of a crowd now regarding him with disdain. His friends shuffled uncomfortably, avoiding the piercing glares from onlookers. The once ruddy group of bikers was now silent, their smirks erased by the weight of the situation. Terrence took a deep breath, steadying himself as he straightened up. "You didn't know he was a canine," he reiterated, his voice calm yet pointed. "You don't need to know a dog's history to treat it with respect. It's not about what you didn't know, it's about what you chose to do." Tony opened his mouth to respond but hesitated, caught between an apology and an excuse. The crowd wasn't waiting for him to explain. Their collective judgment was clear on their faces, a silent but damning verdict. King, still in his poised position, glanced up at Terrence for direction. Terrence gave King a gentle pat, his hand steady despite the lingering tension. "Good boy," he murmured, the praise a quiet reminder of their bond. From the crowd's edge, a woman spoke up firmly. "You owe them both an apology, a genuine one." Tony looked around, shoulders sagging under the weight of all the eyes on him. His pride felt like a heavy chain, but even he couldn't ignore the moral reckoning before him. He shifted awkwardly before finally mumbling, "I'm sorry." Terrence tilted his head slightly. "Not to me," he replied simply. "To him." Tony's face flushed with discomfort. He glanced at King, whose gaze remained steady. "Sorry," Tony muttered, barely audible. "I didn't mean to, kick you." The apology was awkward and forced, but the crowd's murmurs quieted as the tension began to lift. Terrence nodded, accepting the apology for what it was. "Next time, think before you act. It will save you from situations like this and prevent harm to others." Tony didn't respond. He merely stepped back, retreating to his friends, whose earlier confidence had been replaced with uncertainty. One of them muttered something under his breath as they began walking toward their motorcycles, heads down as they exited the park. A few people in the crowd clapped softly, acknowledging Terrence and King's quiet strength. A father, holding his young daughter, leaned down to whisper, "That's what real courage looks like." The little girl nodded solemnly, her wide eyes fixed on King. Sensing a change in the crowd's mood, Terrence exhaled deeply and gently tugged on King's harness. "Let's go, boy." But before they could leave, a young boy, about 8 years old, ran up to them with his mother following closely. "Mister," the boy said shyly, "your dog's the coolest. Is he okay?" Terrence smiled, his expression softening. "He's more than okay, he's my partner, and he knows how to handle people like that." The boy beamed and glanced at his mother, who nodded encouragingly. "Can I pet him?" Terrence chuckled lightly. "Not today, kiddo. King's still on duty, but thanks for asking." The boy nodded, admiration shining in his eyes as he watched King walk beside Terrence toward the park's exit. Around them, the crowd's murmurs faded as people returned to their picnics, jogs, and conversations, but the memory of what they had witnessed lingered, a quiet reminder of the power of respect and restraint. As Terrence and King walked away from the park, the crowd slowly dispersed, but the impact of the moment remained. Parents exchanged quiet words with their children, using the incident to teach kindness and respect. Dog owners patted their companions with renewed appreciation. It wasn't just the bikers who had been humbled. It was everyone in some way. Terrence sensed the energy shift as he and King approached the exit. He didn't need to see the people to know they were reflecting, perhaps reevaluating their own actions and assumptions. King walked steadily beside him, proud yet calm, as if he understood the significance of what had just transpired. At the park's edge, a woman approached cautiously, holding a toddler. She looked at Terrence with admiration and gratitude. "I just wanted to thank you," she said softly, "for standing up to them, for showing us all what strength looks like." Terrence smiled warmly but humbly. "It wasn't just me," he replied, resting a hand on King's head. "It's easy to stand tall when you have someone like him by your side." The woman nodded, glancing at King. "He's amazing. You're both incredible." Terrence chuckled lightly. "He's just doing what he's trained to do. But if today taught me anything, it's that we all have a role to play. Standing up for what's right goes beyond moments like this. It's about the small choices we make daily." The woman smiled, adjusting her hold on her toddler. "Well, you've definitely inspired me, and I think you've inspired many today." As she walked away, Terrence paused, letting the sun's warmth soak into his skin. He reached down to scratch behind King's ears, voice soft with gratitude. "Good boy, King. You did well today." King leaned into the touch, his tail wagging slightly, a rare display of relaxation after such an intense encounter. Together, they resumed their walk, leaving the park behind but carrying with them the quiet victory of a lesson well taught. The world is full of moments that challenge us to choose between the easy path and the right one. It doesn't take grand gestures to make a difference. Sometimes it's as simple as treating every being, human or animal, with the respect they deserve. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Let's remind each other that strength isn't about intimidation or force. It's about kindness, courage, and standing up for what's right.